Yeah, it does because as good as the comeback was and as bad as it was, they didn't close it out. I mean, you're making the playoffs 5 seasons in a row. You almost beat Pittsburgh with a backup quarterback. Yeah, they've got some issues that you've got to control on your team and things, with players losing their cool and such. But I'll put it this way: if Dalton plays in that game, more than likely Cincinnati wins that game. And you don't want to use excuses. But if you're the owner, you're going, well, okay, hey, we could have won this game, made a playoff run a deep playoff run if we hadn't lost a quarterback, which not that we could do about that. So no, I'm not throwing Marvin Lewis after 5 straight playoff bursts. No way.
No wins in the playoffs, obviously, and it was a tough situation for them without the quarterback there. What's the turning point of that game? Is it Vontaze Burfict losing his cool? Is it Pac-Man Jones losing his cool? Or is there something else that cost them in that game?
Hill fumbling the ball, for one. There was the idea that maybe they should have just downed the ball and then tried to kick a field goal, and down the ball and then, taking Pittsburgh's timeouts and tried to kick the field goal. That was part of it. But, even Hill fumbling, it's not like he didn't protect the football. I mean, he was doing what he was supposed to do. And from that perspective, Pittsburgh made a great job of stripping the ball out. So, that was probably, that was the thing that really cost them. But, really they've got to address an issue. I have a book called Scientific Football, a book I used to write. And in one of the books a few years ago, I had a chapter of a book, Cincinnati, the section of the book titled Marvin Lewis's Home for Wayward Football Players, where Marvin Lewis, the idea of the article was that Marvin Lewis likes to get players who he could be a father figure for and such. The whole organization is kind of built that way. I think maybe they need to rethink that because you can't lose your cool like they did. And mind you, everything that happened at the end of the game with Burfict, the headshot, and Adam Jones, touching the referee and things and getting a penalty for it. Those are all justified penalties. Now, maybe Porter shouldn't have been on the field, and maybe you can talk about some of the other penalties that didn't get called, and there's some inconsistencies. But all that going into the game, and you can't go the officials that way.
Yeah, Casey Joyner's with us. That Pittsburgh game, the Steelers hold on to win. Ben Roethlisberger comes back. He couldn't even lift his arm up. I mean, you got to wonder what went on back in the locker room that got him to come back out in the field late in that game, and you wonder if he'll be ready to go, this week coming up here. But realistically, the Pittsburgh Steelers again struggled on offense for about the 3rd or 4th consecutive week here.
They did, and if Roethlisberger comes back, can he throw anything further downfield? They probably popped the shoulder back in place because it's said to be separated shoulder. So what the diagnosis was. So they popped the shoulder back in place, and maybe give him a pain-killing shot or something of that nature. But he couldn't throw deep downfield. But it's going to be interesting that you're going to have a divisional playoff game with Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning, and in both cases it's going to be, can these guys go vertical, or they're all going to be dinking and dunking? I'm not sure we ever thought we'd come to that point.
Yeah, and obviously you look at a disappointing end again for the Bengals, which, by the way, you're right, Joey Porter, what's he doing out in the field? Not to take anything away from what the Bengals players did, because that thing just got completely out of hand here. But how much of that gets placed on the coach? I mean, because there are a lot of people, you said without Dalton you'll give him a little bit of a pass, but some people questioning the fact that his team has constantly been out of control.
Yeah, that is a big part of it, but it's the officials have to keep better control of it. I'm not sure if you're the officials, though, what more you can do, because people are giving them a lot of grief, and rightfully so, because there were some inconsistencies in their calls. But Porter comes out in the field and he's trying to, one of his players gets knocked out and he's out on the field, and they're trying to provide support. And I can imagine the officials might have been at the standpoint that, hey, he's out here, one of his players is hurt, and somebody's coming out here and showing some support and things. But you've got a lot of things to control too. I mean, you got 53 players aside. It's not an easy thing to, and coaches. You got 120 people and you get 7 officials. Maybe you can take some of the backup officials that are in the game in a situation like that and have them try and do a little more crowd control, as it were.
18-16 Pittsburgh wins. Kansas City just blows the door off Houston. I guess Houston really shows you can have a great defense, and that can kind of keep you involved. And for the most part, you can win playoff games with a average quarterback and a great defense. We've seen that before, but maybe a little bit different eras. But they just had inept quarterback play for most of the season. For them to get to this point seemed to be an accomplishment enough. But how real was Kansas City?
Oh, Kansas City's fantastic. If you go since week 6 and you start looking at there's a metric, points per drive. It's how many points per drive you score on offense and points per drive you allow on defense. Kansas City since week 6 has been at or near the top of the league for that entire time frame. I mean, they're scoring a bunch of points on offense, considering how many times they have the ball, and they're not allowing any points. They're stopping the run, they're stopping the pass. I mean, they're doing everything. Yeah, Houston was probably the most favorable matchup they could have possibly asked for, but they shut down Nuke Hopkins, and they've been doing this to a lot of teams. Now, are they going to be able to do it the rest of the playoffs? You think about it, Pittsburgh's got look at all the offenses they're going to be going up against. Pittsburgh might have Roethlisberger injured. Peyton Manning isn't the same quarterback. You look at all the potential matchups, things, and you go into Tom Brady, and they got a terrible offensive line, and the Patriots haven't exactly been doing fantastic on offense either. So looking at that going, I think Kansas City, you can look at any of those matchups because that team can keep up with any team in the AFC right now.
Casey Joyner here on 97.3 ESPN, ESPN.com, NFL Insider. Seattle gets, a huge break with Blair Walsh missing a field goal. Now, he had given them all their points. He had been perfect, and he was blasting these things right down the middle every single time. And then the easiest of them all, he absolutely missed by a mile. What is that attributed to you from your perspective?
I'm not looking at it being the lace. He hit the one that you mentioned earlier in the middle when he had the laces. Look at his foot. His plant foot now, you can't entirely tell from the angles they were showing, but it looks like that his plant foot got too close to the ball, like he overhit his plant foot. And if you get your plant foot too close to the ball, now you can't do your regular follow-through, and now your body's coming up at a much different angle than what it would if you had your plant foot where it was supposed to be. So after the game, he said, I haven't had a chance to look at what happened, this and that and the other, but I think he probably knew. He just overshot it, and he got nervous and hit his plant foot wrong, because once you do that, you're going to be hard-pressed to do any field goal, especially you're sitting on the left hash mark. And I can't understand why Peterson on the run before that, why he goes to the left. Why don't they tell him, stay right down the middle. Don't make our kicker try and angle this thing at all. You just stay right down the middle and set it up. So kind of two mistakes there.
Well, and I agree with you, but sometimes kickers, they'll pick a hash that they like, right? And you'll run to that. You might run the play to the right side if you want the right hash. Sometimes these kickers actually do like kicking from the hashes.
Yeah, but I usually a right-footed kicker trying to kick from the left hash. I guess you definitely don't want to kick on the right hash if you're a right-footed kicker. Usually speaking, unless you think you pull it inside and things. But normally speaking, I would think that they would want to set the thing up down the middle. I don't know. You know what might be the way to figure that out is to go back and look at the point after attempts, because you can decide where you want to be on a point after attempt. But if he's been kicking from the left hash, I don't know if he does that or not, but I might be something to go back and look at and see if he kicks from the left hash. If he kicks from straight down the middle, obviously that's probably where he wants it most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the weekend, that miss right there, you had the costly penalties, you had the hit obviously bursted on Brown that really was part of that, but that really got everything going there. There was so many plays this weekend, and then the fourth game, you had two good games and two stinkers. Green Bay just dominated Washington. Washington looked like they were okay early, but in the second half, they just didn't look like they belonged.
Yeah, they didn't. And the thing is, going into that game, Washington had led the league in vertical passing and stretch vertical passing over the last 4 weeks coming into that contest. And you look at Green Bay, and Green Bay's offense hadn't done anything vertically speaking. And mind you, when people talk about great Rodgers looked, and he threw for 200 yards. It's not like he had a fantastic game throwing the football. I mean, a really good game, but it's not like he threw for 400 yards or something against a really bad defense. He had a good performance, but Washington's pass defense, Green Bay's pass defense are playing exceptionally well, and it shows that pass defense is for real. So.
We'll take a look at all the divisional matchups coming up on Thursday's show with Casey. It was a wild couple of games. You had some crazy endings in the Pittsburgh-Seattle game, and then two lopsided games with the Kansas City and Green Bay wins. But sets up a pretty good divisional round. We'll break them all down on Thursday's show. Thanks, pal.
Appreciate it.